So Joe Biden was confronted by a veteran asking him why he voted for the Iraq War. This is a really emotional clip, and rarely do you see a politician confronted like this. Take a look.
I'm an Air Force veteran here with Army veterans. We're just wondering why we should vote for someone who voted for a war and enabled it. Thousands of our brothers and sisters, countless Iraqi citizens. You enabled that war. You also gave a medal to a man who enabled that war and caused that war. Your blood is on your hands as well. And you're disqualified. You're disqualified. My friends are dead.
Chose my son who was in Iraq. Okay? For a year. That doesn't matter, right? You don't think it matters to me. It matters a lot to me.
I'm sure it does. Okay. And I'm not going after your son.
You better not.
I'm not. No, I'm not going after your son. You are disqualified, sir. Disqualified. The blood is on your hands. Blood is on your hands. No. My brothers and sisters died in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he enabled that to happen. He enabled that to happen. He is disqualified. He is disqualified. No way he can be president. They are dead. Millions are dead in Iraq. He will not be allowed to be president. Disqualified. Trump is more anti-war than Joe.
Fucking bullshit. Fucking imperialism. We actually fought in your damn wars. We fought in your wars. You sent us to hurt civilians. We hurt civilians. You pushed us out to do it.
That was amazing. That was absolutely beautiful. I feel like he said everything that needed to be said. He didn't just make the case for the people that served in that war, but equally for the scores of Iraqi civilians that also died as a result. It's so interesting watching Joe Biden shut him up and talk about his own son. He always does this. This is a weak, pathetic defense, and he has used his son in the past before to silence criticisms and make ridiculous policy statements. For example, he used his dead son, he invoked his dead son in an ad to attack Medicare for all. What? It's quite disgusting at this point. And okay, your son also served in that war. And then what? He just walks away. He literally sent that man to Iraq to fight and then won't even talk to him, won't even dignify him with a response. Look at that level of disrespect. Joe Biden sent him, literally sent him to fight in a war, and now he won't even speak to him. And this is a very important thing that needs to be addressed because out of all the people that were running, Joe Biden was the only one who voted for the Iraq war. And many people don't understand that Joe Biden orchestrated the movement to go to war with Iraq. Okay, he was the leader in the Senate on the Foreign Relations Committee. Basically, a very commanding, important role in decisions related to foreign policy. And he directly worked to make other senators vote in favor of going to war. And not just that, you had people trying to pass amendments saying that George Bush doesn't have the right to go to war unless it's approved by the UN or there's an imminent threat. And Joe Biden wanted the imminent threat part removed. Because he was like, no, it doesn't matter if there's an imminent threat. We should be allowed to vote to attack another country regardless, because maybe in the future they're doing something. Another thing that Joe Biden did is he stopped experts from testifying in the Senate, in Congress. People who had an anti-war position, but who were nonetheless experts on the subject, experts on the Iraqi nuclear program, people in the intelligence community. He wouldn't let them testify. And another thing Joe Biden also did is that he shaped the narrative of the war. So by denying people the right to testify, by shutting other people up, by making hearings shorter, he shaped the narrative in the Senate and in the media into a pro-war dialogue. Remember this, and tell this to your friends, and tell this to your family, and tell this to people online. Joe Biden didn't just vote for the war in Iraq. He orchestrated it, probably more than anyone else in the Senate. And this is not a joke. I highly recommend you go watch a film called Worth the Price, where they talk about Joe Biden's role and the Iraq war in general. So I just find it absolutely abhorrent, disgusting how this man literally sent these veterans to go die in that war and won't even speak to them now. And notice how they try to shut them up. It really shows you this double standard in American society and how they treat veterans. On the one hand, they say things like, oh, thank you for your service, and they really pride themselves in veterans. But on the other hand, when you see how veterans were treated when they came back from the Vietnam War, I mean, tens of thousands of them were homeless. Tens of thousands of them were denied healthcare. Tens of thousands of them were denied a check because they were drug addicts. The government was like, oh, you got addicted to dope while you were in Vietnam? Okay, we want nothing to do with you. You're not getting any check or any medical service, nothing from us. And this is that kind of resentment that people have towards veterans. As long as you shut up and you follow orders, oh yeah, then we love you. But if you criticize the war, we're going to shout over you and we're going to shut you up. You saw them chanting Joe, Joe, Joe on top of them to drown out the veteran. I mean, how messed up is that? Like the dude literally went to fight your war and now you won't even let him speak? You walk away like a coward. You invoke your dead son as a token to shut him up. And you wag your finger in his face. Ah, man. That's just messed up, yo. That's really messed up. And another thing is the suicide epidemic. I talk a lot about depression and mental health as well. And that's directly related to it. They just don't care. You have actually more people that have died from PTSD and depression and suicide than you do who actually fought in the war. I think you have 4,500 casualties in the war, but about 9,000 who actually died from suicide. And that's another elephant in the room that society doesn't care about. They don't want to address. And Joe Biden is directly responsible for that. Directly. So I think this is a very valid avenue of criticism that Bernie Sanders and people in general need to undertake against Joe Biden, because it's not enough to just say you voted for the Iraq war. You have to expose his instrumental role in making sure that it actually took place, that the United States actually attacked Iraq. Now, Joe Biden knows that he has no defense. So what he's done during previous debates is say that, oh, George Bush tricked me. I didn't know. I thought he wasn't really going to do it. What? Even if we want to give him the benefit of the doubt, that indicates gross incompetence. So why should you be the president? If it comes down to really crucial decisions and you're constantly making really bad ones, why should you be the president? So either way, he's either completely implicated and was very conscious of what he was doing, which is the case, or he's incompetent. And in both cases, he shouldn't be elected to the highest office in the country because he has displayed incompetence or malfeasance. And it is clearly the latter. This notion that you are a U.S. senator, you have access to highly classified information because you are the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. You can talk to absolutely anyone you want, from the CIA, from the White House, from the NSA. You have access to all kinds of information that other people don't. And you're trying to tell us that you didn't know any better? This is ridiculous. If you don't know any better, then who does? Millions of people all across the world protested the Iraq war, and they knew better than you. They knew that Bush and Cheney were lying. So don't play stupid with us. Don't believe that for 1 second. And once again, I implore everybody to expose that Joe Biden had an instrumental role in encouraging the war in Iraq and making sure that other people in the Senate fell in line and voted pro-war, voted to go to war with Iraq. And that's just one thing on Joe Biden's record. There are countless other things that we have to talk about. And that poor veteran, the two of them that were in that video getting shouted out by everyone else, treated like garbage after doing their service. That's just really messed up. That's really crazy to see. Like he said, man, Joe Biden has the blood of all those Iraqi civilians on his hands and all the people who served 100%. Make no mistake. Joe Biden not only voted himself for the Iraq war, but he made sure that other senators also voted for the Iraq war, and he lied and skewed the narrative and created a false reality in the Senate and in the public eye to push for war and regime change. He is a dangerous, evil person. There's no other way of putting it. He cannot be trusted to become president. He will keep the regime change wars going. He will keep foreign intervention and imperialism on track. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders voted against the Iraq war and did his best afterwards, despite not being able to stop it, did his best afterwards to make sure that veterans had good health care and tried to help them as much as he can. So that is a very important contrast that Bernie Sanders needs to be making between himself and Joe Biden. It's not enough for him to say on the debate stage that, oh, well, I didn't believe George Bush and Dick Cheney. No, you have to say that Joe Biden knew better and lied and orchestrated the war. And let's be really clear here. This is not just a question of, all the veterans that have suffered from this, the suicide epidemic, the PTSD. You have a million Iraqi civilians that died as a result of this war. And this has affected even people like me, right? Why do you think there's a war in Syria right now? Where do you think ISIL came from? It came from the power vacuum after removing Saddam. Joe Biden is directly responsible for that. This regime change crap destabilized the entire region. But the point is that millions and millions of people have suffered from this, either directly or indirectly, Arabs and Americans alike, and Joe Biden is directly responsible for that.